and namaste. This is Preeti Adhikari, and I am the founder of the Great Nepali Diaspora, and this is TGND Beats, Diaspora Ka Kurakani. This is where we highlight people from all over, global Nepali professionals from all continents, and we share their stories of success, perseverance, and struggle. And today we have our first guest from Australia, Mr. Sudeep Acharya, who is the co-founder as well as the CEO of MTX Asia Pacific. Welcome, Sudeepji.
Thank you, Preeti. How are you?
Good. Thank you. I know we had a few, challenges in terms of time zones and everything that we so appreciated. To get started, tell us what MTX does.
No, thank you. That's a really good question to start with because I'm the most passionate about answering that question. Obviously, I live MTX life. So MTX is a global IT consulting and digital transformation from the global headquarters in Frisco, Texas. But in Australia, our headquarters is in South Australia, Adelaide, South Australia. We are obviously a digital transformation agency that partners with platforms like Salesforce, AWS, Google Cloud, etc., to create outcome-based digital transformation for the customers that we serve. One of the reasons I'm really, really passionate about what we do is majority of our customer base is public sector, right? And the reason I love that is because, I've always wanted to work or, be a co-founder or be a part of an organization that does technology for really important cause, right? And creating impact for the community that we live in. And I'm lucky enough to be in the MTX community here, where we have amazing talent globally as well as for the APAC region, who are pretty passionate about creating outcomes for the citizens that we are. We are the citizens of this country, or for Singapore or Japan or New Zealand, where we serve, and create outcome with partnership with our public sector entities or government agencies, right? And that's the bread and butter of our business. We love what we do, right? And the fact that we've been through the thick and thin of COVID, where the government has played a crucial role in protecting people and providing services to our citizens. We've been through that, and that gives me joy in seeing how little what we do can create a bigger impact out there, right? And then that's what MTX does.
Awesome. No, thank you. And I think your passion shows up, right? When you talk about it, and I think that's so apparent. And I think you're also very right in terms of especially public sector, but I'd say a lot of people, a lot of organizations do amazing work, though they're not tech enabled. Okay. I love that there is this, it's a gap that I've noticed in so many organizations, big and small. So I love that you're working on that. To get started, right? How does, somebody from Nepal, with obviously, we'll talk more about your experience and, your travels and everything. How does, somebody from Nepal, end up as the CEO of this larger than life company? I think that's something so incredible. So love to dive into that. Share a little bit about your childhood or youth growing up in Nepal. How was that?
Absolutely. Look, Nepalio, I was born in Nepal, in Kathmandu, actually. And family is from Sangha, a village in Sangha, right? Like my dad and mom, they moved to Kathmandu, and I was born in Kathmandu. Went to school for the most part in Kathmandu, and then in India. Finally, I went where I graduated with my +2. So I've lived both in Nepal and India for a significant amount of time. Childhood was really fun. My dad was also a public servant. So that connects me to MTX now, right? My dad was a public servant, and for a part of his career, he was a chief district officer of various different districts in Nepal. And my passion for what I do actually kind of connects to that.
Mhm.
There was once during the thick of Maoism in Nepal, I happened to be in Dolakha, where my dad was the chief district officer, and there was a lot going on, right? I don't know. I was silly. I had just finished my plus two. I was 17 years old, maybe 16, 17 years old. I was getting ready to go to the US. I was doing the usual thing that all of us do, TOEFL and SAT and all of that. But I happened to go to Dolakha to just see my dad. And what I saw there was pretty interesting and revealing for me. I mean, we've seen it. As Nepalese, we have experienced that a lot, right? So what I saw there was the service that the chief district office provides to the citizens. One of the important services is Nagarik Dharmanani, right? Like the citizenship certificate. And I saw people, like really old people, younger people, women, all of them, spending days in front of the CDO office waiting for the administrator with good heart to find their older Janmadar type of certificate and all of that in a sack of paper that was stored somewhere, rat infested, dhule, all of that, to find their document so that they can reissue or issue their certificate for the first time, or passport, or whatever that may be. That bothered me, right? Because my computer introduced by obviously plus two. I had been using computer. I had been using computer. I had learned a little bit about software. PC magazine खूब पढ़थे. एक दुईवटा Canon footage पनि गएको थिएँ. I had a few ideas, but I was still young. And when I saw that, I had like, we should be able to solve this very easily, right? Like software बनाउन मिल्छ भन्ने थाहा थियो. अनि यो पुरानो डकुमेन्टलाई स्क्यान गरेर सिम्पल डेटाबेस बनाएर एटलिस्ट सर्च गरेर फाइन्ड गर्न मिल्यो भने स्क्यान गरे हुन्छ त्यो जन्म दर्ता अथवा whatever document they have. अनि simple database बनायो. And find, when they come to get the support, you can just simply search and find. Two idea dimakma furio. And I went into my dad's office and I said, Dad, let's do this, right? And he obviously sarkari office budget camera outside. And I'm like, and Dad le मलाई सोधेछ तपाईँ कति चाहिन्छ? अनि मैले 3 लाख भने त्यति बेलाको. त्यति चाहिँ चाहिन्छ दाइ. कम्प्युटर पनि किन्न थियो, कम्प्युटर पनि थिएन बाइ द वे. कम्प्युटर पनि किन्नु पर्ने थियो. 3 लाख इन्भेस्ट गर्नु पर्यो. I took that. He didn't give me cash. He said, all right, we'll give you 3 lakhs. Just go do what you need to do. And this was, I went back to Nepal. By the way, I didn't know how to write software. I was, 17-year-old. I was just learning. I knew it was possible. So I came to Kathmandu. And in Kathmandu, to Putali Sarik Nazikai, Alpha Beta Institute went to.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember.
त्यहाँ मैले एकजनालाई चिनेको थिएँ. त्यहाँ गएँ अनि त्यहाँ चाहिँ एकजना इन्डियन सर हुनुहुन्थ्यो. He was a good Java developer, a .NET developer त्यति बेला. मैले उहाँलाई गएर यो आइडिया प्रेजेन्ट गरेँ. अनि मैले सोधेँ कति पैसा चार्ज गर्नुहुन्छ मलाई यो सफ्टवेयर भने. स्क्यान गर्न मिल्नु पर्यो अनि डेटाबेस सिम्पल डेटाबेस, नथिङ कम्प्लिकेटेड. अनि फनी इनफ he said 50,000 रुपियाँ. Right? And I was like, sure, let's do it. And I promised him 50,000 rupees, and he started doing what he does. And this is, I went to buy computers, like at least 2 computers, standard, all of that. And computer scanner, I think it took him about 2 weeks for him to write the software. Right? The software, install your computer, install computer. And this is, I remember Daddy got your Toyota, we went back to Dolakha to install it and everything. And yeah, it went live, right? Obviously, and we scanned all of the document, right? So I think that was my. You know what? The funny thing is, your story, my MTX through Nagarin someone had forgotten about it, right? When I started MTX and I'm reflecting on my life, I was like, oh, maybe that was the start of it,
exactly.
Right? In a weird way, right? So. That was my childhood, pretty long story, right? But it inspires me. That memory inspires me more than anything else because the real problem to the citizens, right? Like I'm here, बुढो मान्छे आउनुहुन्छ, कहाँ गाउँबाट हिँड्दै हिँड्दै आउनुहुन्छ, त्यो जग्गाबाट डकुमेन्ट खोज्नलाई 2 दिन लाग्छ अनि they have to stay in a hotel or whatever, होइन बाहिर सुत्नुपर्छ के हुन्छ, simple things, right? even of Australia, US government, but there are simple things that we haven't done technology-wise, adoption-wise, where banks and private sector has gone leaps and bounds forward, right? And being able to solve those simple problems, right, takes it a long, long way, and it gives me joy to do it every day, every Monday morning, every Tuesday morning, every Wednesday morning, right? Like the fact that we're solving those problems gives me joy over anything else.
No, I love this story, Sudeep. But what I also really like is, that's some scenario that so many of us have faced, right? Especially, Nepal, we've all seen it and we've all complained about it. Okay, but I think what differentiates you, and I think what differentiates entrepreneurs, is they look at these pain points and say, okay, I can fix it, man. Okay, even if you sort of were the facilitator, you weren't the one coding in a way, right? But still, kid, I think that's interesting, kid, right? In terms of it's a very different way of thinking about stuff, and I love that was the beginning of everything you are, Aile.
No, I agree, and I don't think it was intentional. Pretty, I never thought. First of all, I never thought I was that smart, right? I was just a regular kid, right? And second thing is, it was not intentionally you're so true, smart camera too. Just I think life happens in so many ways, right? Like you're a spark bio, and let's do it when you and this future is uncertain most of the time, but you kind of want to do it, right? I think I don't want to say I don't want to separate myself away from all of us in any ways at all, right? Because it's not different, right? It's just I'm lucky to be in a position. I was lucky to be a chora of CDO, right? When all the ideas are the resources, the opportunity to present that to a CDO wasn't there, right? And more lucky thing. मेरो daddy हुनुहुन्थ्यो, I could just go and blurt it out, right? I got lucky, right? So, and then I'm in a position because first of all, intentional I got lucky, and then I've surrounded myself with a great group of people who do outstanding job, and I reap the benefits of it, basically.
Of course. That what I've learned is the people that work the hardest and the people that make it happen, they also tend to be the most humble, and they sort of give a lot of credit to luck. Tara, thank you for sharing that. So, when you were young, what did you want to be?
That's such a good question. You know what? Like it changed so many times, right? It changed a lot. I knew I was good at computers. I had interest in computers. So I wanted to do something in computer. I asked my dad to buy me a computer when I was in 6th standard, right? But I also was really good with language too, right? Especially writing part of it. I enjoy writing. I enjoy reading books. A lot. In fact, Trishma does. Right? So I used to also in Nepal during that period when I was a teenager, I used to write for Himalayan Times and the Space Time and few for Kathmandu Post as well. So that was also another passion I used to Himalayan Times the midway भन्ने section थियो Friday आउँथ्यो बिचमा middle of the page one. Yeah, the colorful.
Yes, we have to educate our community that is the physical papers haru pani huन्थ्यो भनेर तर
papers हुन्थ्यो. I used to write for the midway regular weekly column हुन्थ्यो मेरो when I was a teenager, right? So I had that passion too. When I was going to the US, my first I-20, सबैलाई थाहा छ नि I-20 लिएर गइन्थ्यो नि US मा हैन. I-20 was for bachelor's in journalism.
Interesting.
Right? I don't know what got me into it. I was interested. I started becoming friends with a lot of people who were journalists. मेरो inspiration नेपालमा चाहिँ निसाको छोरी आकांक्षा शाह हुन्थ्यो हैन. She was an inspiration to me. right?
Of course.
And I even did a few FM recording with her. What you beside my FM station here. And we used to just hang out.
Sharma.
Correct, exactly.
Sharma.
Exactly. And but when I went to the US in the first semester itself, undergrad, right, I saw, I started seeing that the computer technology, especially San Francisco news, Facebook was up and coming. You had to be a university student to be a part of Facebook. To technology go to drive the developer, I was like, you know what? I think I have to change it. I didn't always polish my passion for language and writing and all of that, but I want to be part of the technology revolution. I'm going to change that major. Immediately in the first semester itself, I knew I had to change. And everyone, Nepali, non-Nepali friends, all of them started pushing me towards that. So then I switched to a IT degree. Not so much of a coder type of degree, but the degree was called Business Information System Management. So it just prepared me for who I am today, essentially. So teaches you enough technology to be dangerous, but mostly focusing around how do you create value out of technology? How do you solve a problem out of technology, right? And to degree party, that was it. That was the journey.
No, a quick question on this, right? So there is also a lot of tendency, especially young, right? And you also try to follow the herd, right? Oh, this is like the most happening, thing to study. This is like which pays the like a lot on it. There's also this mentality, right? On kati times say it can be, a risk. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. What is your sort of advice to people that are just trying to go into something just because it's like the it subject
right? So it's such a good question, right? And well, one thing that I tell everybody, young and middle-aged people like us as well, is life is a series of experiments, right? Like you experiment with a lot of things, right? And the way I actually translate that is you are making mistakes, right? So the only thing is be intentional. Be intentional about what you want to achieve in your life, right? What do you want to do? What do you really want to achieve? But experiment with a lot of things. You don't have to be right the first time when you're starting your educational journey or career either, right? Because if you experiment and if you make mistakes, fall down and pick yourself up and try something else, that's where you learn a lot. And then you diversify your thinking and your approaches of doing things, and you just become a better person, right? So the biggest advice is for young people, yes, it's easy to follow the heart, right? I absolutely agree, right? But follow your passion. And I know a lot of people say that, right? And it is true, right? Following your passion is really, really important to you, because you're going to not only enjoy what you do, obviously, following your passion, but also find joy in the outcome it creates, right? Like you're going to be really, really proud of it. So you'll enjoy the journey and you'll enjoy the outcome too. Now, to peel that onion a little bit, it's not always easy, right? Especially for our audience group coming from Nepal. It is not easy, especially in the US, right? Let's get real. Now, I've lived through that experience myself. A lot of us in the US eventually go into IT sector because it's easier to get permanent residency, green card, visas, and all of that, right? And I have a lot of friends who have compromised on their real passion because of those needs. And same thing happens in Australia too. And for the most part, Nepal has a different dichotomy. It's a societal pressure, and people go into a different sector despite of their passion.
Right.
So every part of the world has
the package of everything, right?
exactly, you carry the baggage of everything. So now back in reality, you can't take it away. You can't change that reality at once, right? Like you can't change the reality of the immigration system in Australia, US, none of that. You can't change the reality of the society that in Nepal that is there, who really looks for doctors, engineers, and all of that, right? So then what do you do? In my honest opinion, I think whatever career path you choose, right? Based on what your passion is, I think you'll always find a way to achieve success in that career path using your passion, right? And the reason I say that is because, yeah, there are going to be some anomalies, right? But because let's say if you're really good at communicating, right? Or communication is your skill set, you enjoy doing it, you enjoy being a social butterfly, you enjoy being in public and all of that. What do you do if you are in technology field? Because a lot of time it could be isolating, right? You could be sitting in front of a computer and just solving important problems. But what I've seen is then people will naturally find their way into, because they are always passionate about what their skills are and what their passion is, they will naturally marry that with the skills that they are learning and create something out of it, right? So I guess the gist of the question is, even if you get into a field or a career path that you're not really excited about, be intentional about using your skills and passion into developing that, because more often than not, we've gone all the way in the middle. It's very hard to go back and start from the beginning in your passion project or whatever we call it, right? So try to marry, and eventually you'll find joy in there too, right? I'm not the kind of school of thought. I do not, tell young people especially that you always have to follow your passion despite of everything, because it's not always going to be easy, right? So compromises. Oh yes, compromises is always the key, right?
Right.
We all do it every single time. Yes.
Right. No, that's really good advice, Dipsy. And I think one thing that I'd like to also plug in is that's one of the reasons why we've created the Great Nepali Diaspora as well, right? So hopefully people that are sort of in that dilemma don't really have to figure out on their own, have to Lord, they after figure out garnu. Maybe there's a community, whether it's Australia, US, or anywhere, where at least you can ask these questions. Okay? Like in terms of ki bhairasa, I mean, not others won't solve your problem, but at least there's people to ask. So I'm hoping it's the dilemma bhabelama people will utilize हाम्रो community चाहिँ.
Absolutely, and I that's what inspires me. I wish there was a Great Nepali Diaspora when I was in that dilemma, when I was young, right? I was lucky enough to find other friends who guided me. It took me longer to find that path. But a lot of time, some people don't find it, or it takes them too much struggle to go through that, right? And yes, I absolutely, that's why I'm so inspired, right? Because it's really important, especially for young Nepalese.
Of course. Thank you, Sudeep. Next question, saying, you're one of the very few people that have experience in the US and Australia, right? Very, very tara, just physical distance ma pani, just, and also what we perceive as culture, देखि सबै कुरामा, right? So, with that experience, tell us in terms of what's been your, what's the difference you've seen? The professional aspect.
Okay. The professional aspect, right? Look, moving to selecting Australia, to live in Australia was personal more, right? Because I moved here for a firm that I used to work for before we started MTX APAC. A firm that I used to work for, they asked me to come to Australia for 2 years to establish their business, American business in Australia for 2 years. And that was the gig. That's why I moved to Australia with my daughter, and Trisma kindly agreed to do it for 2 years, giving up her career as well. We fell in love with the country for a variety of reasons. And one is the pace and the culture, the closeness to Asia, right? Those are the few things.
Matters so much.
Oh, it does. Trust me, it does. And then the fourth thing was the Nepalese community.
Mm.
I kid you not, in Australia, once you step out of my house,
Right.
there is rarely a chance where you don't meet a Nepali. Rarely.
Right.
Unless I just go out and come right back in. Always Nepali doing one thing or another, right? And that also kind of brought me closer to it. I was like, this is really cool. So now in professional level, look, US is great for innovation and doing things really rapidly, fast, right?
Mm.
We measure it out our work too by way efficiency factor. It's very hard, and purely because in America we work a lot compared to Australia.
Right.
We work a lot. I still do because that's in my blood now, right? But we work a lot. That's what creates efficiency. That's what creates innovation. That's why the Googles and the Facebooks and all of that are in the US, right? It's because it's that country that gives you that. It just teaches you that, and the environment and all of that makes it
exactly that. Right.
Yes, and Australia is not quite that. It's different. It's very laissez-faire, right? It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
It has to be more than all right.
Yeah, right. But it's so commonly used. It is so commonly used, and what that tells you, it's compromises, right? And for different other value, other things that they value as a country, they value quality of life, a different perspective of quality of life. They value spending time outside. They value family time a lot more than what I experienced in the US, right? And it's so important for the society here. But in a professional level, if you look at that actually reduces the efficiency a little bit. Right? But it is what it is. It is the way the society is built, and you have to operate within the norms of the professional culture that is established, right? In our community, now let me pare it down to our community, right? In Nepalese community in Australia, which makes me really inspired by the communities, they do all kind of works, right? And majority of Nepalese in Australia are nurses,
right?
Yeah. Majority of it, and obviously Australia has a demand, and we fulfill that demand, right? And it's really inspiring from top of the hierarchy to just starting, right, in the medical field. Obviously, there are plenty of doctors. In fact, a general practitioner closest to me, Dr. Dixit, she is Nepali as well, right? So in medical field, we have Nepalese community quite prominently involved. Beyond that, then it's all business. Yeah. Outside of medical and aged care, which is like caring for older people in that sector, most of the Nepalese are involved in one or another type of business, and which is really inspiring because that's what lifts a community up, right? If you look at it, so be it restaurants, be it construction company. I know a Nepali gentleman here whose name is also Sudeep, by the way, who doesn't live too far from me. During the height of COVID and the construction boom in Australia, he was building, I think, 140 houses at the same time.
Oh my God.
Right? So that's successful, right? It's not.
That's scale, right?
Yeah, that's scale, right? And Nepalese had universities here in Australia, quite a few actually, not just one or two private universities or colleges. I have one of the member of our great Nepali diaspora in Adelaide. He runs a company that brings students, foreign students into Australia, not just bringing them into Australia, but also partnership with the institutions in China, Sri Lanka, not just in Nepal, in China, Sri Lanka. So he has offices in Hong Kong, Sri Lanka. He operates out of Australia, and he does amazing work of providing opportunities to people from all part of the world coming into Australia and educating themselves, right? So really inspiring stories from all different walks of life. And that's the difference that I saw a little bit, right? Our communities, the Nepalese community here, especially in Australia, is more involved in all walks of life, basically. A couple of example, I installed solar in my roof a couple of years ago. The team that came in, I didn't know. I didn't select them to be. I just looked online and found a company who would do the installation and ordered it, and they came in. The whole crew was Nepalese, and it was fun. We made tea and went up tea and all of that.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that experience. And last week, you remember we were planning to, do the podcast when I was in Auckland, New Zealand. I was there. Morning, I woke up and I think we had a miscommunication. The podcast didn't happen. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go have breakfast downstairs. I was in a hotel. I went down, really nice breakfast area. I was the first guy to walk in, and a nice lady welcomed me, and she had a pulley in her nose. So I immediately thought that she was Nepali, but I just wanted to take it easy first. Don't go blurt out speaking Nepali head on. But I walked in, and then she came in to ask for my order, what I wanted. And then I asked, are you Nepali? And not only she was Nepali, but the entire crew that was running that hotel, 5-star, top-class hotel, was Nepali community, right? So the management and the chef and the management, the cleaning, all of it was Nepali. So that's what kind of really inspires me in so many levels, right? Because we're doing all kind of things, living our country.
You see Nepalis in all walks of life, doing all kinds of so that's amazing. And I think from what you describe, it also sort of tells us that maybe Australian culture is a little bit more like Nepal in terms of the work-life balance and family and so on. That maybe makes it a little bit easier for families to adapt. Paniola.
Yeah, no, a lot easier. I'll tell you how it works even in MTX, right? At 3 p.m. in the afternoon, right? Generally, we don't have meetings.
Oh, after
exactly at 3 p.m. No, not after 3 p.m. After 3 p.m. we do exactly at 3 p.m. School pickup time. So school pickup time, it's really important. You got to go and pick up kids, right? So at 3 p.m. between 2:45 to 3:15, it's a block up, basically, right? So we do meetings after that. We sometimes work 6, 7 p.m. late, right? But that time is important. You go and pick up your family. The other thing important that I have had to learn about the culture is your kids and family comes first, period.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is, period, right? And it's something either I was not aware, and I didn't, I had a very young daughter when I moved to Australia, so I hadn't experienced it a lot, but I always thought in the US, there were lots of compromise that parents were making.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Yeah.
But
Here,
the
compromise is less so, right? They focus more on kids. They get the work done. Don't get me wrong. They work late.
But if you normalize it, it makes it so much easier, right? I think it's about organizations and people normalizing these things that, this is a priority monitor, right? If it's otherwise, it's so much harder. Just to compare US Australia ko, I remember working in New York City and child pickup yestै 2-3 बजे कति बजेको लागि. So I live in New Jersey, about half an hour away. So biana drop off, school drop off गरेर work, and then I would have to leave early to pick up and then work from home, right? That just because there were no other sort of parents, and also the company, but I guess the cultural pani within, I felt like I was a thief, like this started throwing in, and like people sort of subtle hisabले पनि make you feel like you're doing something wrong, right? When it's not normalized, even if you're making up for that, action go break, it's so I know that
here it is so normalized that it's actually encouraged, right? Go spend time, right? Because you're not going to get that, right? Put your kids to bed and get your work done after that, right? Like work needs to be done, obviously, but that flexibility and that normalization is really, really key. And another quick example, that we've had is when we had our first one earlier in Connecticut, right? And Trisma was still working for a company called FactSet, which is also based in Stamford, Connecticut, right? It's a financial services firm, and I think she took. It was very generous. FactSet had a very, very generous maternity leave policy, and she took, I think, 2 months off after having it, right? And that felt like, oh my God, again, same sentiment, right? Same sentiment that you had. Guess what? When we had Avis here in Australia, 1 year.
Insane. I can't even imagine.
Right. 1 year. And she extended it further. She went back and she realized, no, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Right? Like it's and when Trisma said that, my response was like, just we'll handle it. Just quit, right? Or let them know. And she let them know, and she had a job going back again, right? So that kind of a culture is so different. It's 1 year. You don't get paid, but it doesn't matter. Like you get paid for, I think, depending on company policy, 3 months, 6 months, whatever that is. But your job is kept intact for a year.
Which is so important, right? And I think, yeah, really, your immigrant communities, we're facing so many things in terms of paperwork, science, kids science, so many other issues, to have to navigate all of this, right? The fear of not having a job or, loss of income, they can everything go mad. I think just having a culture that understands it, makes it so much better. So completely understand. So now we know why there are so many people, so many Nepalis in Australia, right? I mean, it just, I think, and thank you for sharing that. Kinabani khati times I think, one place versus another comment. So there's so many differences. Kati times that those differences are very highlighted, and kati times these are subtle things that unless you go through it, you don't even know these things.
You don't even know. No, and there are two more finer points on, and not plugging in Australia as such, because I'm going to say the positive side of the US and positive side of Australia for young people at least, right? Positive side of the US, education, phenomenal. You will not get the same unless you go to some of the elite university in Australia, and they're far and few between, right? Few and far between. The education system in the US, college education system, not high school, college, exceptional. I love it. I studied there. I've seen people who went to universities here, and I can see a difference, right? US is by far the best. Now, the next thing, once you graduate, what do? You want to, as an immigrant, you want to establish yourself, right? Like if your goal is to live either in Australia or US, now that's where Australia makes it easier, right? Yeah, the immigration system in Australia is, I wouldn't call it fair is not the right definition, because US has a different policy and different politics involved here, but it is easier. It is easier for immigrants like us who apply yourself and follow. So essentially, if you follow the path,
there's a process. It's not a lottery.
It is not a lottery. It is not whether you're going to get it or not. There are no hurdles. No. It's just follow the process.
Get
enough points.
Canada does it, right?
Canada does it. Exactly. It's just like Canada in similar capacity. And there are a variety of different programs, regional programs. If you don't qualify in a bigger city, you can go to a smaller city and the city will sponsor it, all of that. So what it does is it opens up that freedom and door to do a lot of things. And that's why lots of Nepalese here are involved in business, because their permanent residency is done, right? Now they can follow the
explore,
so to say.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I've seen a lot of people here, as soon as they get their permanent residency, quick job, start a business.
Exactly. And I think that's true all over as well, right? When we see entrepreneurs, from Asia and anywhere around the world, you see a lot of them due to societal pressure, afne upbringing, that they'll do a job just because they need the green card or whatever, right? And once they're on the other side of the table, they're ready to showcase what they've always wanted. So
Absolutely.
very interesting to hear about all of this. एउटा question say I have is, and this sort of came up, I keep on hearing these stats in terms of Nepal bada yo brain drain and everything. I'm sure you hear it all the time. And one conversation I was having recently was about how एकदम धेरै नेपालीहरू young kids are obviously going abroad. And त्यसमा पनि Australia is one of the top उसमा होइन. I think Australia नै overall I think Nepal is the third country. So in terms of there's a whole conversation there in terms of Nepalबाट कसरी stop गराउने in terms of this mass migration. तर from your experience and so on, are people equipped to survive? Is it like a one-way thing where people are just taking the risk and coming to Australia, or you think it's almost like an educated, risk?
Look, it's an educated risk, right? Like, look, not everyone is equipped to survive. I can tell you that. I've had experience with young men and women who have struggled quite a bit, even in Australia. As much as easier, in my opinion, it is compared to what I went through for my green card in the US, right? Not just the green card, the career path and all of that, right? It's not equipped. But let me actually clear back and talk about the brain drain aspect of it, right? I think there is a contribution that because I don't want to point finger, oh, Nepal policy, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about for so long, right? And whatever changes happens, that is good, but like we can't just keep on complaining about it, right? So there is something that we can do, and in any smaller ways we can, and that is giving back in some way, right? And
right.
I'm very passionate about giving back in one major way: creating jobs in Nepal. That's what I'm passionate about, right? Yes, I admire when we do not-for-profit work, donations, schools, students. Yeah, we're doing that too, right? But the most important thing that I think we need to be thinking about in one way about the brain drain is creating the opportunity in the first place, right? And I'll give you not statistical example, but very anecdotal example. I have a distinct cousin who is wanting to come to Australia, right? If given the right opportunity for him in Nepal, right? Because he's quite IT minded, he's very smart and all, right? If given the right opportunity, he's tried multiple things. I know there are lots of really inspiring IT technology firms in Nepal as well. For him, if he can find the right fit, I think he would enjoy being in Nepal and he would excel in Nepal.
A lot more people would.
Yeah, a lot more people, right? So I think there is a incumbency on us who we've left, right? Like we're here now, we're already, and hopefully there is in some future we may go back, right? But at least right now, it's incumbent upon us to kind of think about in any capacity to see, like, if you can find a way to invest or do something in Nepal to create jobs, create the opportunity, so that they're not going to come. Who would come from land of momos and Buddhas and amazing everything if there is the right opportunity, right? So I think beyond talking about policies and what could happen so that it's easier for us to stay in Nepal, I think the way I think about it is us as a non-residential Nepalese outside of Nepal, it's incumbent upon us to make some contribution, whatever, small, big, doesn't matter, right? Even if I can play a part in creating one job, that is one more job that is not a person that is not moving away from Nepal, right? And I think that's the way I think about it personally, right? I'm not trying to solve world hunger or big problems.
Exactly. You don't have to, yeah, right? I think that's the thing as well, right? And I love that you're looking at impacting one person. Okay, sometimes I think we're through policy and so on, which is important, right? We say, okay, thousands of people are leaving every day, right? How do you stop thousands of people? If you can stop one, and even your podcast, a few people can impact a few people, right? It makes a difference.
And that's precisely why I was so inspired to invest in Nepal tea, right? that was exactly my thinking, right? So I wanted to become the lead investor for them, and I'm inspired by the story. By the way, they are phenomenal young people. And Nishu, I love Nishu. She's like my sister, right? All of that. But
Exactly.
one of the reason I invested in Nepal tea is also because think about it, just one more job in Nepal through my investment, even if that is done, it pays off for itself, right? And and I encourage Nepalese community who can afford to do it, right? Just think about plugging in Nepal tea. I think they're still raising. Go think about them or any other opportunity, right? I have had fortunate opportunity to have a conversation with another entrepreneur in Nepal. I haven't touched base with them since I come back from Japan, but to explore opportunity to see if I can be an investor for that IT firm as well, right? So for those who can in any ways, smaller, bigger ways, right? Think about that, right? Like think about investing or providing some knowledge, guidance. If you can't invest, right? Like maybe ideas, maybe, hey, we've been doing this in Australia, mentorship. Yeah, simple things, right? So that would go a long way, pretty more than like we're nobody to be able to change massive policies, right? But the smaller impact could go a long way from all of us.
No, I love that, and I love that. I obviously know about your investment, Tara. I love the way you're thinking about it, okay, right? It's not just, there's obviously the business side of things where, you hope that it does well and so on, Tara. There's obviously an impact side of things. And what my hope for our community is we look at both, okay, right? It can't just be impact. It can't just be business. Tara, I think being Nepali, part of the diaspora, I think we have this amazing opportunity where we could be living away from Nepal. There's so many tangible ways for us to, do something. So I love that. When we share your episode, we'll be happy to also share a little bit more about Nepal Tea Collective. I love the guys that are running it, Nishu and so of course.
Yeah, Nishu is an inspirational leader. I've actually just watching him grow over time. I've learned a lot about leadership from him as well. Personally, for me, as I'm also still learning a lot about leadership myself, right? And he inspires me in so many ways. And that's it, right? Like, being able to be a part of their journey. And I'm hoping that, when people eventually listen to the podcast, reach out to me personally, right? I'm available in LinkedIn. Even if you're not using LinkedIn, if there are other ways we can facilitate that, I love talking to people, who have a desire to do something different, or if you're stuck anywhere, right? Or if you need help, if you need guidance, I'll doesn't matter what time of the day or night it is. I'll wake up and I'll meet with them. I met with a couple of. We did our first the Great Nepali Diaspora meetup in Melbourne several months ago. I actually went in and had coffee as you do in Australia. You always drink five cups of coffee a day. I had that, and we talked about doing something in Sydney as well. So I may seek help from somebody to actually organize it, because with my calendar, I don't mind.
Yeah,
I don't mind showing up, right? But unfortunately, again, to be fair with my family and pretty, as you must have seen, I travel a lot, right? So it just makes it difficult. The last 1 month itself, this month I've been to Japan, Brisbane, and New Zealand, and I'm back, and I'm traveling next week again, right? So it just makes it a little tricky. But
of course,
yeah, if the events are organized, I will be active participant in sharing stories.
I know you will be. And one thing that just as a follow up on what you talked about and so on, I love that you run this big company, you're traveling all the time, you have family obligations. There is still you're volunteering to really help our diaspora and so on. And I think that's a very positive thing that I've seen all over US ma dekhi yahan pani, where people are saying, okay, reach out to me. I'm going to help in any way I can. But on that note, I think, one sort of advice to people that do is also be really respectful of other people's time. त्यो is going to be super important. That we're lucky that somebody that like Sudeep and so many others are coming and saying, okay, I want to help our community. I think we need to be really respectful, not doing the homework when we actually meet. They're really understanding where do we plug in people, okay, right? I think it will be a waste for everybody if I ask Sudeep, can you organize an event for me, right? That it'll be of so much more value if we, have other volunteers, organize something, and Sudeep and people like him can come and just, give their guidance and so on. So really, I think our community is getting better at it, that we need to be also more intentional. Like, I mean, that's your favorite word too, in terms of really understanding how to plug in people, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I look, as much as time permits, I'm more than happy to do a lot more, right? But again, I'm just trying to be fair with family and all of that as well. Yeah. And, but look, Preeti, like this is so important to me personally as well. And because you have created such a wonderful platform, right? And it just enables, like, because innately in my heart, I've always wanted to inspire young people to talk about how they can transform their own lives, right? And not just young, it doesn't have to be age-based at all, right? Transform their life. But this platform gives such an immense opportunity to do it in a bigger scale, right? And I would love to be part of that. Transforming life when you talk about, these opportunities at MTX. And again, slight conversation there. 2 years ago, here in Australia, we did a program, changing career program in MTX. So what we did was we went out and we recruited, especially women who had taken that 1 year, 2 year break after the child, but want to change their career, join technology, go back to work. And we recruited women, and then there were several men. There was a chef. There were people who work in different walks of life, and we brought them into MTX, have them in our payroll, and then took them through a 6 months crash course, essentially on technology and Salesforce. And and I was able to spend a lot of time with them, mentoring them, talking about how their contribution is impactful as well, right? And I'm pleased to say, out of that, I think it's still 10 or so people work for us, right? Out of the cohort of 30 people, the other 20, they've gone out and found job in competitors, right? Like with our competitors like Accenture, Deloitte, all of that, right? They've gone out and found jobs, right? Again, we may not be able to do exactly that because, again, that was a funding mechanism was interesting, helped by the government and all of that. But I hope in some ways we can, find ways to bring people who are stuck, essentially, or who want inspiration, and just share our life story, whether it's inspirational or not. I'm nobody to give knowledge. I'm not that smart, but here's my life story, or any of your life story, Preeti, all of our life story, I think will help them untangle some of the knots that they may have with their life, right? And it's important to just continue to talk about it.
Awesome. No, that is incredible, Sudeep. I think that's so important. And I think, the small and big things you're doing, I think for our diaspora, for people in Nepal is so inspiring. And I can promise you that once this episode goes out, I think your inbox or your LinkedIn is going to be flooded. I can promise you that. But on that note, I think, for us, I think this is a beginning of a conversation. I am so inspired by the work you do, and also how much you've achieved, even with all the changes through different locations and everything. It's not easy, right? It takes somebody special to build what you have built. So, हाम्रो तर्फबाट, not just the podcast team, but TGND ko tarfaबाट, thank you for everything you've done. And, let's stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, Preeti, thank you so much for being such a good voice for our community. I'm really inspired by that. Again, I'll say it often, right? But most importantly, thanks for creating such a beautiful platform. I love it. I enjoy it. I cherish it. I hope I can play a very small role in some capacity to continue to help grow the the diaspora. But thank you so much for what you do. Subigya, thank you for adding your value into the diaspora. What you do is very important as well. And thank you for being part of the team. I'm really inspired. Can't say more.
Perfect. No, thank you, Sudeep. And to all our listeners, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Thank you.